Many thanks for staying with us. This is Baptist Believer, the program where we unpack the belief of the Baptist, most especially the Nigerian Baptist Convention as a whole. We unpack our beliefs, why we believe it, and how does belief affect us as a Baptist in Nigeria. Over the past 2 weeks, we've been exploring the biblical and historical foundations of local church autonomy. Last week, we looked at the practicalities of this autonomy in our local churches across the nation in areas of leadership, finance, missions, and cooperation. Today, we will be bringing this series to a close as we look at another interesting aspect of this local autonomy that seems to be sparking a lot of questions and sometimes controversy across the board. And these are the benefits and challenges of the local church autonomy. Many of our local churches are still unclear as to what it means to be an autonomy local church. This, of course, is what our Vice President Ministerial of the Nigeria Baptist Convention will be helping us unpack. Reverend Professor John Oheyenaya. Thank you, sir, for coming to the studios this morning.
Thank you, Adiola. Good morning, our viewers. Welcome to today's edition.
Yes, let's quickly kick off with this, some of those issues. Now, let's begin with the challenges of the local autonomy before we begin to talk about the positives that comes with it. Now, there seems to be a lot of questions when it comes to autonomy, when people hear that word autonomy, and it looks like, wow, this is not new. We have established that it is not new. I mean, it's as old as the Baptist denomination itself. It is even established in the early Christians, with the early Christians, so it is as old as the Word of God itself. Wow, what are some of the major challenges that we seem to have with aligning with autonomy?
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Adiola. And welcome once again, our viewers. The issue of local church autonomy is, like we have been saying in the past 2 episodes, is a very key doctrine of the Nigerian Baptist Convention, not just the Nigerian Baptist Convention, but also of Baptist churches and Baptist people all over the world. And non-Baptists really struggle to understand what we call autonomy and how we describe it and how we run it. But it's a critical doctrine of the Baptist people. And just to give a little recap, when we started, we said that local church autonomy is the principle that governs the relationship of the local churches amongst themselves and with the denominational bodies. We did look at the historical aspect that before the Baptist denomination began, the relationship between local churches and denominational bodies was more like stacked in the direction of control, the control of local churches by the denominational bodies. That is, in the denominations that were in existence before the Baptist movement began. It was the Baptist people who came on the scene and said, no, when we read the New Testament, what we find is that local churches have some level of independence in running their affairs so that they are not controlled completely by denominational bodies or by a group of churches, but they make decisions on their own and they run on their own and do things the way the Spirit of God leads them. But in the midst of that, there is also the room for affiliation and for relationship amongst the churches and amongst themselves. So that is what we call local church autonomy in the Baptist denomination, namely that it is the principle that local churches, while they are independent on their own to some extent, They also relate with other churches to form associations, conferences, and then they come together at the level of the convention. We also have established the fact that local church autonomy does not run on its own. It works with other principles and policies of the denomination, like the priesthood of every believer, the teaching that every child of God has access to God through the Holy Spirit, and standing on the basis of the sacrifice that Jesus made on the cross, that every believer has access to God, can relate to God, can pray to God, can enter the presence of God, and can hear from God. And then it's also based on soul competency, the idea that every child of God has the privilege to read the Word of God and understand it for himself or herself and for other people also, so that a child of God can go to the scriptures and get direction for their life and for their Christian journey and for their ministry. And we also mentioned the third component of the principles that help local church autonomy to run, which is congregational polity. The principle that in a local church, governance is discharged by the entire congregation, not by one person or by one group. So you begin to understand local church autonomy as Baptists understand it when you put priesthood of all believers, soul competency, congregational polity together. And then you bring the idea of local church autonomy, meaning that a local church is autonomous to run their affairs because each member is a child of God, is filled with the Holy Spirit, has access to God, can hear the word of God, can hear from the Spirit of God, and can contribute to the governance and decision-making process of a church. For those kinds of people, the Baptist denomination says they can run their affairs because they are in direct touch with the Holy Spirit, who will guide them and who will lead them. But having said that, we also established the relationship that should exist between local churches and beyond the local churches as well, when they come together as denominational in denominational relationship. And so local church autonomy emphasizes these two aspects of independence and cooperation, as we have established since we started. The fact that the independence that local churches enjoy is not absolute, is not total, has led some people to suggest alternative terms, like instead of saying independence, they talk of interdependence, to show that the local churches relate among themselves, to be able to run effectively as God desires for them to run. And so that's one angle to it. But we have established the point that if cooperation is a part of local church autonomy, then it means that the independence embedded in autonomy is not absolute, it's not complete, it's not total. Because if it is total, then you cannot be talking about relationship beyond the church. But it just means that each local church has some level of independence to govern their affairs, but while they continue to relate with denominational bodies, association, conference, and convention. Now, in terms of the challenges of local church autonomy, I'd like to mention about three challenges that we normally experience in the understanding and running of local church autonomy. Number one, we realize that the definition of local church autonomy that says it refers to independence and cooperation already creates a challenge, because independence and cooperation appear to be antithetical. They appear to be opposite to each other. They appear to contradict each other. How will you be talking about independence and you're talking about cooperation? So from the word go, the concept of autonomy presents a challenge because of the opposing views that are involved in its understanding and its definition. So when among Baptist people you find controversies around the understanding and practice of local church autonomy, we should understand that it is bound to happen. It shouldn't surprise anybody. But then it should help us to sit back and to now re-examine the issues and then see how we can help clarify and help to move the church forward. So in the first place, the principle itself, standing on antithetical views, creates controversy and tension sometimes. But then secondly, I also find that controversies arise regarding the understanding and practice of local church autonomy when one of two things happens. When either the independence that is a component of autonomy is overemphasized, or when cooperation that is a part of autonomy is overemphasized. So when you are in a context where somebody is overemphasizing cooperation, almost to the point of wiping out the independence that churches should have, then you are going to find a pushback. When you also have a situation where somebody is overemphasizing the independence or the freedom that local churches have, while wiping out the element of cooperation that should exist, then you will also find a pushback. So, so in the second place, I would say that the second challenge we have in running local church autonomy, as we understand it from the scriptures, is the inability of human beings to maintain balance. Human beings normally find it difficult. It's either we are dancing towards one extreme or we are dancing to the other extreme. Local church autonomy requires balance. And that sometimes is difficult for human beings to maintain. So we also understand why this challenge is there. The third challenge that we find in the understanding and practice of local church autonomy arises when there is church conflict. When there is division in a church, then it becomes, the question now arises, let's say there are two people or two groups in a church. The question now arises, which of these two groups should exercise the autonomy of the church, that the church has? You have two groups of people who are moving in different directions within the same church. And then there is that question, who really should exercise the autonomy of the local church? And it is at such times that the responsibility falls on denominational bodies to step in. The association, the conference, the convention, responsibility falls on them at such times to step in to avoid crises blowing up, to avoid problems going out of hand. Because we also know that even in relationships, when people have misunderstanding, sometimes there is need for a mediator. Sometimes there is need for someone to come and say, let us sit down and dialogue. Let's sit down and talk. What is the problem? So that we can resolve the issue. So you find that in spite of the challenges that arise from the practice of local church autonomy, the policy has within itself a framework to meet and to respond to those challenges when everybody involved is mature and has a sense of responsibility both to Christ and to the church and playing their role well. Then all those mechanisms that are in place to checkmate the challenges will be able to play the role that they are supposed to play.
Okay, now having established the challenges, now, okay, let's also take a look at the positives now. What would you say are the key benefits of the local church autonomy for the Baptist churches?
Yes, there are many benefits that accrue to the Baptist denomination because of this principle or doctrine of local church autonomy. One of it is that, and this is the basic one, that anybody that knows Baptist churches know that Baptist churches are vibrant. You know, the vibrancy you find, the dynamism you find, you know, among Baptist people is due to this principle of local church autonomy. You know, there is so much variety you find when you examine Baptist churches, the way they run and the way they do things. The way one church carries out some aspects of their work is not the way another church carries out the responsibilities of their ministry. I think I've mentioned somewhere along the line in our discussion here some of those practical examples. That, for instance, you might go to a church and you find that they start their service at 9 o'clock. They take Sunday school at 9, start the main worship at 10. You will go to another Baptist church, they are starting service at 7. You will go to another church, they start with worship service before they come to Sunday school. You will go to another church, they will do Sunday school, they will do discipleship lifestyle before they start the main worship. There is dynamism that you find. If you go to Baptist churches too, you will find that the order of worship is not exactly the same. There are, recurring decimals you will find. There are constants you will find. But there will be varieties you will find in the order of worship of Baptist churches. The kind of music that they use, the kind of order of program they run. In some Baptist churches, they use more of hymns. In other Baptist churches, they combine hymns with contemporary songs. And depending on the membership, depending on the mood, depending on the environment, there is a lot of dynamism and vibrancy that you find among Baptist church. And it's because of autonomy of the local church. Otherwise, somebody somewhere will be the one telling them how to worship, how to order their worship service, how to do their work, and all of that. But we don't have that. We allow each church room to make vital decisions in the way that they run. So that dynamism and vibrancy, you don't want to throw it away. It's very, very important. And the second benefit is like it. There are, when you have organizations, even churches, a church will normally begin very vibrant and strong and dynamic, and then after 10 years, 20 years, dynamism begins to go down. After 50 years, 100 years, the dynamism begins to go down. The church might even become cold, and become like old age will catch up with them, But that doesn't happen in the Baptist church, and it is because of local church autonomy. The vibrancy we have in the Baptist church is such that change is very easy to happen. You don't have to bring change from the top. Change can start from the grassroots. You can come to a church business meeting, and the youngest member of the church will put up their hand and bring a suggestion that will turn the whole church around in the right way. So he doesn't need to be the pastor. He doesn't need to be a denominational leader to be able to do that. That dynamism it ensures the continued growth and expansion of the Baptist denomination. Autonomy of the local church is one of the principles or reasons that ensures that there are no dull moments in the Baptist denomination. We are always evolving, always moving forward, always responding to time and to changes, because we are a vibrant people, and it is due to local church autonomy. And the third benefit I will mention is in terms of our mission engagements. The fact that the Baptist denomination grew as fast and as much as it has grown is because of local church autonomy, because you find that in the Baptist church we carry out the work of the Great Commission at various levels. You have the convention. The convention has a global missions board that does missions, has mission fields both within and outside of Nigeria. So convention is carrying out mission. At the conference level, we are carrying out mission at the conference level. At the association level, we are carrying out mission. But in addition to all of those, you find also that local churches are involved in mission. You will find a number of Baptist churches that have mission outposts even outside of Nigeria. While the convention has a mission presence outside Nigeria, some local churches also have mission presence outside of Nigeria. And they do have mission presence even within the country as well. So you find that local church autonomy, by empowering our local churches to get involved in missions, helps to create greater dynamism in the work of the Great Commission. That is why Baptist churches keep growing. Even as old as we are still planting churches. Day by day, you hear churches are being planted, if not by the association, then by the conference, then by the convention, or by one local church or the other. Planting churches day by day and winning souls for Christ is because of local church autonomy. So irrespective of the challenges, it has benefits that ensure the continued vibrancy and growth of the Baptist denomination and of the work of the Great Commission that the denomination is involved in. And that is why no Baptist wants to throw it away. We are only saying and pleading that we all should sit down, have a better understanding of it, so that we will know how to run it, for it to accrue to us the benefits that are intended.
Thank you for that in-depth explanation, sir. Now, let's take a look at some of the issues that are arisen from this conversation on local church autonomy. And one of those issues is the issue of leadership accountability. Now, how can autonomous churches ensure that leaders don't become authoritarian or unaccountable?
Yes, thank you very much. I will address that at two levels, at the local church level and at the denominational level. Local church autonomy is also one of the principles that inspire the kind of accountability that we are talking about. I mentioned earlier that there is a counterpart principle or policy of local church autonomy in congregational polity. You know, congregational polity, for those that are not Baptists that may not understand what it refers to, is the principle of the Baptist denomination wherein at the church level, for critical decisions to be made, the entire church has to gather together, discuss the matter, and take a decision. It's not one person or one group that makes decisions. At the denominational level, let us say association, conference, or convention, all the churches that make up that level of denominational group will also have to gather together to discuss and take decisions. It's not one person or one group that makes decisions. That's what we call congregational polity. Now, what that means is that in the Baptist denomination, leaders, there is a mechanism for holding leaders accountable. At the local church level, leaders are held accountable because they have to report to the church in conference, right? You have decision-making bodies in the church, like the church council, like the diaconate. Church council brings together all the officers of the church. Diaconate brings together the deacons and the pastors in a church. You have these bodies, but none of them can make decisions and implement them without getting clearance from the church in conference. So at the level of the church in conference, they are accountable. They have to report their decisions or recommendations. They bring them as recommendations, and the congregation will now approve or otherwise. And when the congregation has approved, they will go and implement the policy. They will come back and give feedback to the congregation. So there is a reporting process, and there is always accountability. So even a pastor in a church or a deacon in a church knows that people will ask them questions. So that puts them on their toes and makes them to be accountable. And it helps them to follow the laid down procedures for running the church and for doing the things that are done in the church. And that is why it is not very usual or common to hear about financial misappropriation within or among Baptist people, because they will ask questions. And anybody that is holding their money or anybody that has been given leadership or authority knows that he will give account. So that puts them on their toes. At the level of the denominations, association, conference, and convention, the same principle applies. whoever the moderator is, whoever the conference president is, whoever the convention president is, they know that they will come to give account to the entire body. The entire body has already put in place a structure for the administration of the association, conference, and convention. And it is when the leaders follow those structure that it is easy for them to defend themselves. Okay, but when they go outside of that structure, then they will be asked questions and they will be held accountable. So local church autonomy is very, very helpful in maintaining leadership accountability within the Baptist church. So where you find a challenge is, for instance, in a local church where somebody will say, but in this church they have not been holding meetings. They have not been calling church in conference and all of that. It happens a few times. And when it happens, you know, we call the attention of the leaders there that, hey, that's not how the church should run. But where you find congregational polity running the way it should, autonomy running the way it should, you're going to have accountability, because that's one of the things it is intended to ensure.
Okay, now let's take a look at the risk of a division in the organization. Now, can you help us understand how the local autonomy affects unity within the denomination? Because again, there are concerns that there seems to be too much independence that often creates division in our churches.
Yeah, thank you. Remember that we have said before that autonomy involves two things: independence and cooperation, okay, right? So the fact that you have some level of independence there, you know, can create the gap for some kind of a feeling or a sense of total absolute freedom, or even create a situation where a church begins to see themselves in isolation from other groups. That's one of the risks, and that's one of the dangers or challenges of local church autonomy. You know, but we have said that cooperation is there to balance it out. That's what it is there for. And because a local church is involved in the association, and when they are doing something that is not right, the association, the other churches in the association will call them to order. And ditto for the conference, and ditto for the convention level in terms of relationship. And I think it's something that goes without saying. If you say you have some freedom, and then out of your freedom you decide to associate with some other people who also have the same freedom you have, who also have the same level of independence you have, you come out of your independence, you want to associate with them, it means that each one coming to that relationship will have to sacrifice some level of their independence in order for that relationship at the association level, conference level, convention level to be effective. All right? And how is decision made at these levels, whether association or conference or convention, is by the churches coming together. And when the churches come together, everybody has a voice. Every church, every member has a voice. They can speak up. So you come to the association, for instance, all the churches are represented. An issue is raised and it is discussed. Opinions are canvassed, maybe in favor or against. At the end of the day, there is an aggregation of ideas and opinion on that matter. The association comes to a decision. Once a decision has been made, every church in that association is expected to comply. Whatever was your own opinion before the decision was making, notwithstanding. Because you have participated in the process, and now it seems that the majority have this idea that this is the way things should run. Every other person should fall in line for there to be harmony and for there to be progress. And from my own experience too, I have discovered that the way that Baptist churches run is usually very beautiful and very interesting. That you might go to a meeting where you canvass an opinion. If your opinion may be, quote and unquote, the right one, the correct one, but at that point in time, others do not see it like that. Maybe they will turn it down. Fine. You find that maybe 1 year down the line, maybe 2 years down the line, or 3 years down the line, everybody will come back to that opinion you canvassed before. And they will decide accordingly. So I have found that happen over and over and over again in Baptist churches, in Baptist associations, in Baptist conferences, and even at the level of the convention. That is the beauty of it. So when that issue is being discussed, I canvass my opinion, and my opinion is not taken. It doesn't mean I should bring down the house because my opinion was not taken. Because the same opinion that was not accepted today may be accepted tomorrow. So it is maturity that will tell me decision has been made. Follow the other decisions, and then along the line you can keep canvassing your own opinion. Maybe others will also come to see reason with you and come back to your opinion. That is the beauty of our system, and that's why I mentioned the issue of maturity. That is important for there to be maturity in the way that we relate amongst ourselves, even on this issue of autonomy. You know, let us learn to cooperate even when our opinions are not taken. If our opinions are the right ones, experience shows that the association will come back to it, the conference will come back to it, the convention will come back to it. That's the way the principle is expected to run.
Yes, you mentioned while answering earlier that sometimes people confuse autonomy with isolation. And we've seen that play out on different occasions where some churches would neglect every form of checks and balances and decide to isolate themselves from the denomination as a whole. Now, what is the danger in churches isolating themselves from the convention, all in the name of being autonomous?
Thank you very much. You find, first of all, let me put it this way, or start it this way, that you find that absolute independence is a tendency that human beings have. Even sometimes we tend to be independent of God. You find that tendency in us, that we want to be the ones in charge, we want to be the ones in control. It's a human tendency, but I will also say it is a natural tendency, or a tendency of the natural man. Yes, it's a tendency of man in his natural state. But when a person is converted, really born again, really properly discipled, they will learn to relate with others beyond themselves. They will learn to relate with God. They will learn to relate with other people. Isolationism, or this tendency to isolation, I would say, is a tendency of man in their natural state. But with Christian maturity and transformation, people learn to go beyond themselves, to relate with people outside of themselves on proper terms. On proper terms. So independence, or rather autonomy, and isolation are not the same. You know, like we said at the very first episode that we had, that there are two things when you talk about autonomy, and everybody must always remember this. What does local church autonomy mean? It means two things: independence and cooperation. You cannot take one and leave the other and still have local church autonomy. If you throw away cooperation, you don't have local church autonomy. What you have is local church isolation. If you take cooperation and leave that relative independence that churches have, you still will not have local church autonomy. It's like they are like two sides of the same coin. Having said that, it just means that we cannot be pushing the idea of isolation. We must learn to go beyond ourselves to cooperate with others. Because the mandate that God has given to the church cannot be done in isolation. Cannot be achieved in isolation. It can only be achieved when churches come together and work together and collaborate. That's the only way to achieve the Great Commission. And even today, we have realized the importance of relationship to the degree that we are even going beyond denominations now to forge ecumenical unity among Christians. Because we have even come to realize that only Baptist people cannot win Nigeria for Christ. Only Anglicans cannot win Nigeria for Christ. Only Methodists cannot win Nigeria for Christ. All of these churches will have to go beyond themselves to collaborate with one another to be able to accomplish the work of the Great Commission. So we can't even be talking about isolation. It is a satanic ploy to weaken the church and to weaken her involvement in the Great Commission. And we must reject it at all costs and work towards cooperation and collaboration so that we can harness our strengths and be able to move in that power to carry out the work of the Great Commission.
Okay, finally, as we wrap up this episode and of course this series of local church autonomy, what do you think the future is for the Baptist churches in Nigeria as we continue to practice autonomy?
Thank you very much. I think that the future is very bright. And that brightness that the future brightness that we're talking about, or the brightness of the future we're talking about, is also due to this principle of autonomy of the local church. It's an essential doctrine. It's an essential doctrine. And I'd like to also make the point that whereas there are controversies around it, and sometimes there are, it's not that the controversies far outweigh the times and circumstances when there is a proper understanding and practice of local church autonomy. Okay, you may have, let's say in Nigeria, we have about 14,000 churches, right? And you have 12 or 13,000 or even 13,500 who have a proper understanding of autonomy, who are practicing it the way it should. That's actually what we have. But then you will have a few times or a few churches that appear not to have a proper understanding of what it is. And then people notice those few ones and say, autonomy of the local church is bad, it's negative, it's not working, and all of that. That's actually the scenario that I see on the ground. The proper objective outlook is that majority of our churches know what local church autonomy means, and they practice it both in the level to the level of the relative independence they have and to the level of cooperation that there that exists among the churches. You have several of our churches who are cooperating, complying, following the principles as correctly enunciated in our doctrinal documents. Okay, so but when you have a few, it's like what they say, when there is a bad news, it flies and it runs and spreads like wildfire, forgetting all the many good things that are going on. All right, so there is a lot of promise and prospect in the future of the Nigerian Baptist Convention, even owing to the issue of autonomy itself. Because that vibrancy it introduces into our work is so beautiful. And that's what makes Baptist work to grow the way it needs to grow. My encouragement to our people is for us to strive for a better understanding of this principle. Like Like on any other principle, we need to try to understand who we really are. Why are we different from other churches? What are those principles that make us different? What is the proper understanding of those principles? How should they run in practice? We need to have that, continue to have that conversation. That is one. Number two, I also encourage our people to be willing and ready to make sacrifices. In a relationship or cooperation, you have to make sacrifices for the organization to move forward. Like the example I cited before, I go to an association meeting or a conference meeting or a convention meeting. An issue has been brought up, it's been discussed. Yes, I had my opinion, but my opinion today was not the majority opinion. A decision has been made. I'm supposed to have that maturity and sense of sacrifice to give up and to follow along and to be in the forefront of carrying out the decision that has been made. Right? So that on the day that my own opinion is taken, I will have the moral right to demand compliance from other people also. It's not that my opinion must be taken all the time. Otherwise, you won't have a group and you will not have cooperation. So that is the sacrifice and maturity that I'm encouraging our people to display. And then, finally, I will say that whatever happens, Baptist people should be committed to be active participants in the life of the denomination. The denomination has given us that privilege and platform. Let us continue to be active participants. And there are many levels of this participation. Participation in terms of presence, attending meetings and fellowships, right? When the association gathers, I need to be there and be part of what is going on, contribute my quota. When the conference is going on, is meeting, or the convention is meeting, I need to be there. Play my role, the participation of presence. There is also participation of giving. That there is a certain role I'm supposed to play in giving for the work of the association, of the conference, of the convention. I should be willing and ready to do my part to make sure that these bodies continue to carry out their mission. And then there is another level of participation in terms of contributing, in terms of ideas, in terms of opinions, canvassing what you feel is what God is laying on your heart for the association, for the conference, for the convention. I should be ready and willing to play that role. Because the denomination needs my opinion and my ideas to grow. I should not be shy. I should not let, if I canvass an opinion and it is not taken, and another issue comes up, I should feel free to still express my opinion. That is the maturity required in moving the denomination forward. It is by this aggregation of ideas from the people of God that we come to understand what the will of God is for the church, and that we make progress as we follow those decisions that we make.
Thank you so much, Professor Inaya, for helping us bring clarity to this issue of local church autonomy.
You're welcome.
Yes, sir, we've learned today that the local church autonomy, if properly understood and practiced, is not just a gift, it is a responsibility as well. It empowers the churches to govern themselves biblically, and it also calls for humility, accountability, and cooperation at all levels. For everyone watching, we hope that this series has given you a proper understanding of what the Baptist means when we talk about local church autonomy, and it has also helped you understand what it means when we say that your church is autonomous. If you've missed out on any of this, the previous episode, you can watch on our YouTube channel, New Frontiers Television Broadcast, and of course, keep sending in your messages, your questions, and the Vice President will attend to all questions as it comes in. Don't join us again next week on Baptist Belief, where we'll bring to you another issues on our beliefs as the Nigeria Baptist Convention. Till then, I am Adiola Adegoke.